Well, I see people are joining us, so we'll start this. Good morning again, everyone. This is I think our fourth, maybe fourth or fifth town hall session of this fall. We've had started off in October with Senator Johnson and are working our way through all the people in the know that we need to have on these calls. So today we have Bryan Davis, our new superintendent of schools. Welcome to Oshkosh officially again, I guess. And thanks for joining us. For those of you who are listening in, a couple things. We will be we're recording this session, so if you want to go back and view it again, you can do that. So we'll have that on our website probably by early afternoon. So be looking for that. And we'll push it out to members too, so they can view it at their leisure. As we always do, we'll have our guest share some updates with us, and then at the end we'll do some Q&A with Bryan. So if anybody has a question or an issue that they'd like to have us talk about, just use that Q&A tab on the bottom of your screen and forward that over, and then I'll be screening those questions, and we'll ask those at the end. So with that, Bryan, again, thanks for joining us, and I will throw it over to you.
Great. Well, thanks, John. So thanks for having me. So it's certainly an honor to be here today with everyone. So just to give a little bit of background on myself prior to going into some slides, because I know I've met probably many of you, but maybe not everyone. So this is actually a return to Oshkosh for me. So my teaching career actually started out at Oshkosh West. So back in quite a few years ago now, back 98 to 2002, I was a business education teacher at Oshkosh West, and then also coached football and boys basketball during that time here. And it was really a formative time for me educationally. Also met my wife here. So on a personal note, we got married when I taught here, and had our first house over on Golden Avenue in Oshkosh. So it's really it's been quite a journey for us over the last 20 years, and from an educational standpoint and professionally for me to be able to come full circle and serve the community of Oshkosh in this capacity is just really an honor. So just happy to be here, happy to talk with you all today. Certainly part of my work is to be able to get out in the community and connect with as many people as possible. And so if I haven't had a chance to connect with you, either personally or, come out to some businesses, feel free to drop me a note, and I'm more than happy to come out and just listen and get as many perspectives as possible. But really feel blessed to be back at Oshkosh. So what I put together today is just some slides to go through on just some topics that we've just recently been discussing at the district level, and then I can certainly open it up at the end for any Q&A. So let me do my best to share my screen here and see if we can get this rolling. All right. Well, it doesn't, for some reason on my end, it doesn't look like it's allowing me to share. I don't know. John, do you want me just to go through? I can just talk through the slides, I guess. Otherwise, I could send them to you and see if you could put them up.
Yeah, why don't you just do that and kind of use that as the basis of your discussion. So
okay, all right, we'll do that. So again, some topics that I wanted to be able to get to cover today. So I apologize again. I've got slideshows or slides to be able to work off of. One is the budget. So we have our annual budget that was approved by the school board at our past meeting in October. So we had a preview of that budget at our first meeting in October and did the final approval of the levy at the end of October. So just some highlights of that budget. We did have a total levy increase, which is primarily due to the referendum borrowing from the referendum that was passed in November of 2020. So our increase in our total tax levy was almost $7 million, so $6.9 million, which is about a 13% increase from the previous year. Of that $6.97 million increase, though, the referendum borrowing accounts for $5.9 million of that increase. So primarily, the levy increase that was approved, most of that was from the referendum borrowing that's been completed as part of our phase one of our referendum plan for the school district. So if you're not familiar with phase one, that includes the initial borrow for the construction of the new middle school on the north side. And that will be essentially on the current campus of Merrill Middle School. And that'll be a middle school that will be a consolidation. So a joining of Merrill Middle School and Webster Stanley Middle Schools will be constructed. So we've done an initial borrow of $65 million for the construction of that project. We were fortunate to be able to gain some low interest rates on that borrow. I think we locked in at about 1.69%, and that was lower than what the projection was when the referendum conversations were publicly discussed prior to the referendum being passed. So that's a good sign, certainly from a long-term payment aspect of it. But primarily the levy increase has to do with the referendum borrowing. From just purely an operational standpoint, we had a dollar amount that we had for an increase from our operational budget was about just under a 3% increase, $1.27 million increase to our operational budget. Again, just under 3%. What's important to note on that, though, is that a majority of that money actually doesn't go to our operations in our district. We have the way that our legislature has set up our school funding. We have our private vouchers of our students that live in our attendance area that go to private schools. Account for a portion of that operational budget. So we have about between $8,000 and $9,000 per student, depending on the student's level, that goes to private schools that comes out of our operational budget. So out of that, basically $1.27 million for an increase in our operational budget, about just over $900,000 of that goes to private schools. So it doesn't even go to the district. So if you take that amount out of what's actually being spent in the district, we're about just a little bit under a 1% increase for our operational budget. So just to be able to give people an idea of where we are from our tax levy as we're moving forward from a budget standpoint. Part of what's been talked about that I wanted to also address here is our federal relief funds. So we call those our ESSER funds, our elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. So the federal government has provided 3 levels of ESSER funds, or basic, not 3 levels, has allocated money 3 times to help support schools through the pandemic. The first ESSER funds were provided just after the pandemic began. Really, for schools, it was the middle of March of 2020, as we were working through closing schools and getting an idea of how we needed to be able to come back in person or virtually. So that was ESSER 1, was the first level. That was about $1.3 million that we had received from federal funds. And just to be clear on the way that the administration of the federal funds occur, that's really on a claims base. So we don't get a check for $1.3 million for ESSER 1 and then just go ahead and spend it and account for it. It's basically we have the budget amount that we're given. We provide the expenses that are incurred towards that amount, and then get refunded on those funds. So our first level of relief was $1.3 million. That essentially went towards technology to make sure that we had everybody up to speed when we were in our virtual state. from a technology standpoint, also extra cleaning materials and supplies for classrooms as we came back in person to make sure that we had created as safe of an environment as possible. So that was level 1. So again, that was about $1.3 million. ESSER 2 was about $6 million that we had received, again, in federal funds. And so that was for essentially around instructional supplies and support. So that was coming off of the initial pandemic and getting into last school year, throughout last school year, being able to provide some claims, especially around literacy. We were able to give an allocation for every elementary classroom for classroom libraries to boast those classroom libraries, and really looking at supports in literacy and math. Again, a lot of the basic skills that we needed to make sure that we were supporting that for many kids was difficult to do in a virtual setting. And so a lot of those supports are provided. And so that was about $6 million. And then our latest ESSER funds, which are really being allocated, are being decided right now and are kind of in the final realm of what the restrictions are for the ESSER 3 funds, is around $13 million. And that's a more restricted use than the first 2 ESSER funds were pretty widespread between technology, instructional supports, cleaning supplies. ESSER 3 has a much tighter window, mostly around learning and recovery and those instructional supports that are continue to be needed. And along with that, looking at pupil services support. So we have a lot of students with social emotional needs that need that extra support. When we have many students who haven't had a school experience, a full school experience in a couple of years, getting back to that structure creates a lot of anxiety and stress. And so being able to support students in our road back is an important aspect. So we'll be positioning ourselves as we get that final allocation for what supports that we need. Again, our focus from a district standpoint is back to the basics, making sure we have literacy and math and those fundamental pieces covered. We know that's going to take some time as we're moving forward. So that's what we're committed to on our ESSER funds. And again, that's on a claims basis. So that'll happen over the next couple of years as we move forward. All of that is said, and we're very conscious of the fact that these are relief funds. These are not structural changes to our budget. So we really need to be careful and articulate about what supports that we're getting through these ESSER funds, knowing that they're going to fall off, that this isn't anything that's structured into our budget. And in fact, that's created an issue for us from a state level. As we're looking at, working with our legislature on budget increases, just structural budget increases. We've had this past biennium budget, we've got a $0 increase to our per pupil aid, $0 increase to our revenue limit. So we've got some concerns about how that plays out in the next couple of years. The feedback that we've gotten at this point is we've got ESSER funds to be able to work through, our current operations. But again, that's soft money. I mean, that's money that's going away. So we're being really deliberate about how we spend that and making sure that, we don't have anything that's permanent that's going in with those supports. And we'll be working with the legislature to make sure that we can recapture some of the structural support that we need in our budgets as we're moving forward in the upcoming years. So that's from a budget and a ESSER relief fund aspect. A couple other things I wanted to just highlight. I know certainly the face coverings requirement has been something that's been talked about and reported on a lot from the beginning of this year. So we have followed suit with the city of Oshkosh and extended our face coverings requirements. Ours will be through December 3rd. And so I believe the city's is through the end of November. So ours is just to the end of that first week in December. We have made quite a bit of progress we specifically look at our case rates for our students in our age demographics that we have of the kids that we're serving. So we have made some significant gains since September. We're still at a very high level for our constituency, our students between, our 4K students through our 12th grade students, still at a very high level for those cohorts. So we're hopeful that we can get it down at least to a high level and be able to lift that those face covering requirement, make that optional as we're moving forward in December and into the new year. But we needed to extend it for another year, or for another month, I should say. And we'll take a look at that at the end of November, early December. One really encouraging sign for us is our ability to have our 5 to 11-year-olds vaccinated. So we continue to work with the Winnebago County Health Department as a partner to be able to get some school clinics available for those who choose vaccination. So those will be available at Oak Lawn Elementary and Shapiro Elementary coming up in the next couple of weeks. So again, we want to distribute that vaccine as much as possible. It's not a requirement for our kids or for our staff, but it's certainly something that we want to provide as much access to as possible, as well as partnering with our community partners who are distributing the vaccine. So we're hopeful over the next couple of months that through our mitigation measures that we currently have in place, including face coverings, that the vaccination distribution with the booster shots and the younger students will help bring that burden level down. We know that COVID is something we're going to have to live with, for the long term. And we feel once we get to that vaccination status, that's going to be a game changer for us, as people would have access if they want to the vaccine. So that's an update on face coverings. And then finally, I'm happy to announce, and I don't know if anybody here had an opportunity to participate in the Fab Lab opening over at North High School, but it was a great event. I got an opportunity to go to the sneak preview of the Fab Lab opening, but I know we had a good turnout for the opening of the lab, and that is a partnership that we've had with some local businesses, also with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corp, with the Beach Endowment and the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation, putting some grant money together to provide what we call a Fab Lab at North High School. So it's really a state-of-the-art lab. It involves CNC technology that works with computer-aided design software to control and cut and shaping of materials. So our students have access to that as part of their manufacturing curriculum at the high school level and some of their elective classes. And then also have an opportunity for our Wave Robotics team to be able to use that technology as they prepare for their regional, state, and national competitions coming up. I believe they begin that process in January and run that through the spring. So some of the equipment featured in that new lab include the CNC mills, 3D printers, plate maker, and CNC plasma cutter. So just a really exciting space. And if you didn't get a chance to see that, if you Google Oshkosh North Fab Lab, you can see some articles that were written about that event. Also be happy to give people tours. We can schedule those with our staff over at North to give everybody an opportunity to see our kids in action. So just a great opportunity for our kids, and not only at North, but also at West, district-wide. Kids have an opportunity to take these classes. And then the Wave Robotics teams is a really good mix of kids, not only from Oshkosh, but from area schools, to be able to come in and work on a competition. So those kids construct a robot. In January, they find out what the robot needs to do for a task, and they compete again with regional, state, and national and international teams. Actually, the robots have some competition that they participate in. So just a great opportunity for kids to apply their skills as we're moving forward. So that's really, I guess where the rubber meets the road is in the classroom, but just really wanted to highlight that for everybody today as we move forward. So again, just really happy to be here. I appreciate the time, John, to be able to provide some of the highlights and where we're at. And with that, I can take any questions.
Okay, great. Anyone who has questions, please use the Q&A tab, and we'll go through those with Bryan. There have been a couple of questions that came in while you were speaking, both related to, I think, something you and I talked about, met about a couple of weeks ago, the whole issue of notifying parents and having parents involved in this discussion about when kids want to change their pronouns and that sort of thing. And the question relating to, who initiated that topic and what was the process for taking action, and what was the school board's involvement in that discussion. So if you can share some thoughts about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a topic of discussion that came up from our staff who have worked with students that are transgender students that are in transition. We certainly want to facilitate a strong communication and partnership with our parents. But what we found was that in the way our current guidelines were written, that was stifling actually some students with really engaging with some of our staff members for some support to have those conversations with parents. And so the Policy and Governance Committee that includes board members and our administrative team reviewed a modification to the administrative guidelines. Previously, our administrative guidelines required parental consent for any staff member to address a student as a transgender student, as a different pronoun or different name. So the recommendation that came to that committee and that was changed was essentially just removing that parental consent. Doesn't mean, again, that we're not talking with parents and communicating with parents along the way. It just provides us with an opportunity to be able to engage our staff and help support our students in that conversation. So that went through our Policy and Governance Committee. As we move forward, we also had it as a point of discussion at our last board meeting. Administrative guidelines are not anything that needs board approval. That would be board policy. The guidelines fall underneath that policy. But that's something that we'll continue to review as we're moving forward, as we go, and see how that plays out.
Kind of an add-on to the Fab Lab, and unfortunately I wasn't able to get over there, but I heard it was a great new facility, a great new addition over at Oshkosh West. A lot of employers are certainly interested in tech education and getting kids involved in the skills and that sort of thing. And over the years, we've worked with the school district on making sure we create career options. Not just creating those jobs, but also making kids and parents aware of what opportunities are there. Question that came in is, what are you or what will the school be doing to help area young people learn more about options other than just four-year institutions, which really have been pushed, heavily over the last couple of decades. So,
yeah. No, I think the career and technical areas are a really important area, especially for us here in Oshkosh, that we want to make sure that we have exposure, that our students have exposure. And I think some of that exposure starts even at the middle school as kids are starting to explore, career paths. And we have some career pathways conversations that we have with our kids, even down to our elementary schools now. But we'll be working with local businesses. And so anybody that's interested in coming in, Julie Conrad, who's our curriculum and instruction assessment director, coordinates that work along with some of our vocational ed tech coordinators with teachers to be able to come in so we can bring local business people in. I believe that we've done potentially some kind of job fair types of things in the past also. So I'll check with Julie on that. But those are things I think that, maybe because of COVID, we've had to take a little bit of a pause to, but we want to make sure that we get people in person, kind of back into our schools and back in front of our kids. So I can check in with Julie on that and just make sure that we have that moving forward. Certainly want to make sure that we get that going as students are selecting classes as we're moving forward at the high school level.
As a follow-up to that, relating to career and really job placements and that sort of thing, we've been pretty actively involved with internships and youth apprenticeships over the years. Here I have to mute myself. Calls keep coming, but what's the school doing to roll out youth apprenticeship options? When will those opportunities be brought back into the business community?
Yeah, so that's something that Julie and I are working on now, like I said, and we can get some communication out. I know we've had some longstanding partners that we can re-engage with, and making sure that we've got, again, clear pathways for students that are interested in going into those areas. And then just some exposure of opportunities, I think, would be important. So that'll be coming out. I can talk to Julie, get that out in the next couple months, as we're looking at some of those opportunities. Again, it's somewhat, I think, getting back into the rhythm of where we were prior to the pandemic. I think will be important. I know there's also, some opportunities and programs that have developed. I know down in Fond du Lac, they have a program called the ACES program, that we're taking a look at to potentially just beef up what our offerings are, as we're moving forward. So that's some things that we're, again, just taking a fresh look at, what our programming is, but certainly want to make sure that internships and apprenticeships are available to students. Again, it's that application and engagement for a lot of kids that's really important. And we know, especially in this market, a four-year degree isn't for everybody, and that there are some good paying jobs to really have kids contribute to that we can prepare them for. We also want to continue our relationship with Fox Valley Tech, and do some accreditation, with them to have kids that can go in and start getting skills and getting credits at the technical college, even in high school, to be able to connect to. So that's some of the conversations we've had here also.
Right. Changing the topic a bit, actually a lot. Last night, a lot of eyes were on the Virginia governor's race. Education was a kind of a primary, issue that led people to the polls to cast their vote. There was, certainly the end result was a leadership change in Virginia, and a lot of issues, and a question that came in relating to critical race theory. Two questions: what's your position on in terms of what's the Oshkosh School District doing in those regards, and the other part of it, how do you see that playing out in Wisconsin when a year from now we'll be going through a governor's race, and my guess is education and parental involvement in education is going to most likely be an issue across all 50 states.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So to the point of critical race theory, so we've put out a press release and statement, and basically we do not teach critical race theory, so we don't think it has a place as regarding our high school students' education. We certainly want to provide diverse perspectives. We want critical thinkers, but specifically like using critical race theory, this isn't the right application, and we do not do that. We checked, did an audit of our materials over the summer, and then put a statement out at the end of the summer, beginning of the school year, about our position on that. So that's not anything that we do here in Oshkosh. Certainly, education is going to be an important topic. Again, our partnerships with our parents is in our community is really, really important. And we've got changing needs. I think one of the things that we've seen, coming out of the pandemic that was probably more pronounced than we anticipated was just, students' social emotional needs and their ability to be able to get back into a rhythm of school, when many students didn't have much structure for 18 months, and to be able to come back and engage in our schools for many kids has been a struggle. So part of our resource allocation and looking at how we get back to making sure that kids have a safe and healthy place to be able to engage in school, and then have the offerings that we need to be able to get them into jobs that they'll succeed in moving forward. So I anticipate the governor's race is going to be heated, certainly with Governor Evers being a former DPI superintendent. Education has always been, I think a primary topic for him, but I would anticipate some of these national concerns to come in as part of that. So.
Some of the discussion, we all see it on the national news. It's getting kind of testy, kind of ugly in a way, where parents and school boards seem to be pounding into each other, and it's not very productive. So in light of that, can you talk a little bit more about your plan to how to create more collaboration, and more of a collaborative environment with the district, with teachers, administration, and the community at large, and how do you kind of engage those sorts of activities?
Yeah, so that I think that's really important, and I think the school district, can, has an obligation to lead in some respect in that regard. I think one thing that we talk a lot about here is civility. We're part of the civility project here in Oshkosh. That certainly starts at our school board level. As probably many of you know, we had we've had some issues with civility, which isn't necessarily, an Oshkosh specific school board issue, but certainly across the country, there's examples of that. So one, we want to be good models, right? And that includes listening, that includes problem solving together. But what it doesn't include is being disrespectful, and making sure that we're not antagonistic or threatening in any way to parties. So that's what we're monitoring in our engagements with our community. And with that, again, we want to be as open and collaborative as possible as we're moving forward. So being able to get back to do some community events, I think has been really important as we're moving forward. We'll be bringing back listening sessions, hopefully at the new year when we can get more people in our building. But we're really looking forward to being able to do some of those types of events. I think for me, and just being a new superintendent also, is just getting out in the community and doing events like this, to be able to just hear people, listen. I think relationship is at the bottom line of a lot of these things. It's hard to hate somebody, and so we really try to just get out and get to know the work that we're doing, get to know the work that teachers are doing. I've got regular meetings with our principals and getting into classrooms, talking with our head custodians on a regular rhythm here at all of our schools. So that's really helped me, I think, stay grounded and exactly what our staff needs. And I think we're off to a good start with that. Certainly, it's not without its bumps, but we have regular engagement also with our teachers union, just as representatives, have monthly meetings with them just to try to get ahead of issues as we're moving forward. So I think just more than anything, it's just building that relationship and having that trust between people. And that takes conversations. It takes civil conversations that we can hear, and knowing that we're not all going to agree all the time, and we can respectfully agree to disagree. And I think at some level, people need to be okay with that, and be able to just, move forward as we're going.
Going back to, you talked a little bit about the Merrill School project and the referendum, and I guess that was last April. That referendum was passed. It seems like it was years ago.
Yeah.
A couple things relating to that timing in terms of that that construction of the new Merrill elementary and middle school. When is plan to be starting, and when is going to be opening? And then the other part of that, again, my recollection is, there was some other kind of things that have to be done after that relating to consolidations of schools, to be able to handle all the inflow of students and handle it in the most efficient way.
Yes. Yeah. So as far as from a timing standpoint, so we are currently just in the final design of Merrill Middle School, or the new Northside Middle School, I should say. The name hasn't been determined yet. We should be able to break ground kind of late winter, early spring on that project. So we're excited about that, and that's about a year process to be able to get that school completed. And so we'll be opening that school for the school year of September 23, so for the 23-24 school year. So basically kind of 2 school years from now is when the opening will be, and that'll be the consolidation of Webster Middle and Merrill Middle. So basically give us one middle school on the north side, which will be a fantastic building, great for that area, and allow our staff to do a lot of collaboration that we're just not able to do at this point. So, so in that process, we have, as you had mentioned, just some other shifting because we also, as part of this referendum, have part of our elementary school over at Webster being rebuilt. So we'll have an elementary school at Webster that will accommodate the students at Merrill Elementary and Washington Elementary. Also, those students will come over to our new Webster site. And so, and that'll be, we're basically kind of a year lag time from the middle school project. So that project will open in 2024 is what the kind of schedule is for that. So there are some dominoes that we need to line up as we're kind of adjusting schools, looking at boundaries, make sure that we have equitable distribution, because we will have, obviously with one middle school, it's pretty easy for the north side, but we will have elementary, boundaries to be able to look at as we're, closing Washington and Merrill, and be able to just redistribute to make sure that we have a balance of staffing and balance that with our facility capacity.
ARPA, county, city, every township, village have been getting ARPA dollars, other COVID-related dollars. What has the district received, and what's that number, and what are they going to be the potential uses of any of that type of financial relief?
Yeah, most of that financial relief for schools has been through the ESSER dollars. So the dollars that I spoke of. So we had about $21 million total that we've received in that vein. And again, that's the restrictions on that money were pretty widespread for the first two rounds of our ESSER money, as we looked at that, which went anything from technology to kind of safety and security supplies that we had. The third round, the latest round of that, which is about $13 million, is much more centered around learning loss, instructional supplies, supports, and that type of thing. So a few more restrictions on that. So that's currently just being decided on what that allocation final is going to be, and then what some of those guidelines are. So as soon as we get those guidelines, then we'll be supplying, just providing what our exact allocation and structure is going to be for that. But yeah, so we've had about $21 million over the kind of the entire term of the pandemic, if you will. Again, part of the trickiness of that has been, because we know those are relief dollars to be able to help support us, in this piece at this time. Part of what's been talked about in Madison is that money should be used for operational use, which is fine short term, but what that doesn't do then, if you don't build that into your structure of your budget, that doesn't help you once the money goes away. So that gets us in a little bit of a tricky situation as we look for what we're going to actually use that money for. So we're careful to know that that money is not going to be rolling forward in the structure of our budget, so we're not creating a fiscal cliff for ourselves any worse than it's going to be created at Madison for us.
Right. Well, not to get lost in all this discussion, student learning. How are we doing?
So we're certainly not where we want to be. But we are, we do have a plan for how we're moving forward, and we are seeing some early growth as we would look at even this school year and some of the initial assessments that we did. So I think across the country, really, people have seen a drop when we look at proficiency levels of standardized test scores, that type of thing, from traditional measures of state testing and ACTs. We have seen a drop in most of our categories. I think that's to be expected because of the environment that we've been in. It's one thing that we're really doubling down on, and that I've talked about, since my short time here, and we've retooled our central office support really around literacy and math. So a lot of that is just getting back to the basics and fundamentals, and making sure that we have better supports and resources in classrooms for teachers. We're supporting professional development for staff as we move forward, and our our focus is really on growth, being able to take kids from where they are to making sure that every kid has at least a year's worth of academic growth. Kids may start in different places, and that's where the proficiencies, we certainly want to get them to where they're, proficient, the proficient standards at the state and the national level. We know that if we focus on growth, we can do that. And that might take a little bit of time for us to come back to. So we're really being attentive to where our kids are, using our assessments to be able to, translate into what actions we can take and what supports our staff needs. But we were able to bring on a new literacy director this year, just through some attrition. We were able to bring on that person, and she's doing a phenomenal job. So she'll be presenting coming up here in December our elementary literacy plan, basically what we've been doing to retool our plan and how we're moving forward. So I'm really excited about that. That gives us really the fundamental skills that we need. We know that kids that get to, middle school and high school that have reading difficulties, many times that manifests itself in bad behavior or disengagement. And so in whatever field we're going into, to be able to get those literacy skills up is critical. So that's really our area of focus at this point.
Okay, great. With that, I think we're going to come to a conclusion here. So, Bryan, we again appreciate you joining us. Remind everybody that we've recorded this. It'll be on our website. If you want to take a look at it again, tell others. We'll be pushing it out to members. Next week, we got Congressman Glenn Grothman joining us, and it's always interesting in terms of what's going on in Washington as Congress grapples with a variety of different issues. So I'm sure the Congressman will be sharing a lot of it with us on those topics. So, and Bryan, you got one of the easiest jobs in town. No, you're doing a great job. So keep that up. We'll certainly keep engaged with you as the years go on here. So again, thank you for joining us, and we will hopefully see you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.